So are we good to go? Okay, perfect. All right. Good afternoon. My name is Ritha Server. This is my co-counsel, Mona Deo, and today we're going to be representing Home Love during this mediation session. First off, we just want to thank you for taking the time to meet with us, to come and sit together and try to help both of our clients. Mr. Madron is very excited to be working with Mr. Fagan to help these families find a temporary home, and hopefully find a solution to do that.
So our goal today is to come to an agreement regarding the housing, the non-disclosure agreement, as well as repair costs between Home Love and Mr. Fagan. So our mission is really to help there's millions of refugees, and our mission is to help them find temporary housing so that they can start to heal. We are currently looking for about 4 units of 6+ occupancy for a length of about 12 months. So we are looking to negotiate on the number of units available for volunteering, the occupancy size of those units, as well as the repair costs. We also want to make sure that the non-disclosure agreement is a point of priority, as Home Love's mission is based on the volunteerism of individuals. So we really want to protect that we are willing to offer subsidies. And now Ritha would like to talk a little bit about how we hope to accomplish these goals today.
Yeah, so of course we're here to work collaboratively with you to find a solution together. Our strategy is to just listen to what you have to say, ask our own questions, and try to find a common ground to really accomplish this goal. And we've been authorized to accept an offer that has terms which best benefit our client's interests, but we're also here to help your client find a good deal as well. So in the spirit of negotiation and for collegiality, feel free to just refer to us by our first names if you need to. And we look forward to negotiating with you.
Good afternoon. I am Alyssa Cuellar, and I represent Elias Fagan. Really, I represent EF Management. That is the company who owns all of these properties that are owned, that my client is managing as the sole owner of this company. My client really loves and appreciates everything that Home Love does as an organization. He really stands behind their backing of helping refugees find home when there's something going on in their life where they need somewhere temporary to live and things like that. But when it comes down to it, my client does run a business, and it's not something where he's willing to lose a lot of money in his business, because his business is his livelihood. His business is his life. So yes, I believe my client would be willing to work with you guys on some kind of non-disclosure agreement. And because my client really does back Home Love and their mission and what they do, he's willing to take subsidies for some properties and give some up as volunteer properties, as long as Home Again is willing to work with him on some of the terms and some other things like that.
Okay, great. We really do appreciate that, you're open to negotiation, and we do really look forward to building on this relationship and promoting this mission that we strongly believe in. So one of the first questions that we do have is, could you tell us how many units Mr. Fagan is willing to volunteer?
So I generally think that my client's opinion on that is going to depend on what kind of units Home Love is trying to use from him. Obviously, my client has a lot of units, and some bring in more revenue than others. So he is more willing to budge on the smaller units, just because, that is the smaller source of income for him. And even though he is willing and able and wants to help Home Love with these refugees, it would be impossible for him to, give up all of his larger units that have huge amounts of revenue compared to some of the smaller ones.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, that makes complete sense. We understand that he has a business and that he is coming to us with open arms, essentially, and really working to achieve our mission that we came to him with. So we do appreciate that gesture, and we are looking for a solution that will still help him achieve his business goals while maybe helping out some refugees in the process. So in terms of what we're looking to volunteer, like Mona said, the larger units, we are looking for around 4, but we are willing to negotiate on that number based on the amount that Mr. Fagan is willing to volunteer. I think you said that he's willing to volunteer smaller units. Is that correct?
I think it really just depends on what Home Love is looking for. I mean, my client will volunteer units, but if Home Love is only looking for larger units, it's going to be really hard for him to volunteer a lot of units, if that makes any sense.
So I think we would ideally like some of the larger units, but I think our main goal is to try and house as many of these refugees as possible. So could you tell us a little bit more about, could you provide us with a ballpark number, I guess, of the smaller units that he would be willing to give in terms of volunteerism?
So obviously, like I said, my client is running a business. This is something that he needs to be getting some revenue. So I mean, genuinely, it depends on what Home Love is willing to give him as a subsidy. What that amount would be, that would kind of give us some wiggle room if you guys want to throw out a number that they're willing to pay him for the subsidy units, and that would kind of maybe give us a better idea of where my client wants to go. He is willing, like I said, he is willing to volunteer units, but obviously if he's giving up a number of his units to Home Love, it's going to be harder for him to volunteer more units.
Of course, and we definitely understand that point. I guess I think it would be better if we start with maybe how many of the larger units he's willing to either volunteer or put under subsidy, because that would give us a better idea of how many Home Love is going to need. Because again, we are looking for larger units. We just need to start off with a number.
So I know that you mentioned that Home Love is wanting to house as many refugees as possible, correct? So obviously, the larger units are going to seem like more of a option for Home Love. But as I stated before, if my client doesn't give up the larger units, he may be willing to give you guys more of the smaller units. Is that something that you guys would be interested in, or is your client like all large units or we're out?
So ideally, and Mona can back me up on this or jump in whenever you feel like it, Mona. Ideally, we are looking for the larger units, and that's specifically because a lot of the refugee families that we're seeing tend to be larger families, families up to 5, 6, 7 people. And so when we throw out a number like 4 larger units, the reason that we're doing that is because we're trying to keep those families together. Of course, we understand that this is a volunteer program, and we're just really working to house as many refugees as possible. So we do want larger units, and whatever deal we come to by the end of the day, whatever it ends up being, it should have at least 2 to 3 larger units, but we hope that we can bring down the number from 4 by offsetting it with some smaller units.
So 4 is just not going to be possible for my client. Like I said, he runs a business, and if he's giving up 4 of his larger units, he's giving up a good deal of his revenue. Some of these units bring him in. I mean, his total revenue throughout the year is pretty high, and if he's giving up all of the units that bring in the most of that revenue, even with a subsidy, it might not even equal what he would have gotten if he would have just rented it out himself. Like I've mentioned before, and I'll reiterate, he really does. He loves Home Love's, sorry, that was weird. He loves Home Love's values. He loves the company. He wants to be involved in it. He wants to volunteer units. But like I said, he does run a business, and 4 of his larger units takes up quite a bit of his revenue. And I just don't know if that's something that he would be willing to do. What we can maybe talk about is, so he has this 3-bedroom duplex that obviously houses 12 people. That would give you guys essentially 2 houses that would house families of 6, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
So what if we played around with that a little bit? Because that gives you 2 of, I guess, larger units, but it's really only my client losing money on 1 larger unit. Would that be something that your client would be willing to look at, willing to talk about?
Yes, I think we would definitely be willing to talk about that, and we do appreciate the offer. I think along with that though, would your client be willing to give us some of the smaller units in turn if we're taking this 1 unit?
I think if you were taking this 1 unit from my client, we would be open to talking about, I mean, even if you wanted to subsidize some other units and then him volunteer some units, it would just be things that we'd have to, kind of go back and forth about, because that is his unit. That's his unit that's bringing in his most money every month. That's just him out of the kindness of his heart saying, I believe in Home Love. I want to work with Home Love. That's just something that we feel gives you guys a fair chance, really, because I mean, it's one unit, but it's really giving you two of what you want, because you can put 12 people in that unit. You can put two families of 6 in there. So, I mean, yes, we are open to it, but I would like to hear, my client would like to kind of hear what you guys are thinking in terms of that.
So before we go into a little bit more about that, I did have a quick clarifying question. What is the length of time that that would be offered for?
So my client is really, he feels that, you know, these are short-term units, as that's like Home Love's thing, is they're giving people short-term housing to get away from what they are going into. I think that he would be open to discussing like a 9-month term for these larger units, if that's something that you would be interested in. We can maybe go up a little further, like I said, depending on the subsidy that you're willing to give. But just because, you know, this is a tourist town and there's going to be times of year where he could be making far more than what's estimated on this chart. And if he is committing to giving Home Love this unit for 12 plus months, he's going to end up losing money in the end.
Okay. On that point, could you just, is there any way that you can give us a number of how much he makes either off of that unit or his revenue number in general for the year for all of his units, just to give us a better idea of how to match and best compensate him through our subsidy?
So total for his units, he brings in a little over $1 million. Clearly, that is his largest unit. So that's bringing in quite a bit of money for him. And like I said, he would be willing to discuss bringing in other units. Or if there's, you know, a different 2 larger units that you guys would like to discuss, he would be open to that as well.
So before we get into like some of the other units,
Mhm.
I think our like Home Love, I think is trying to keep the families together or provide them with a home for a longer period of time, just to minimize the disruption for the children and give them the ability to heal. So in light of that, do you think it would be possible to extend the 9 months to 11 months?
I think that that would be possible depending on the subsidy. If that's something that we can come like put a tab in and maybe come back to later after we discuss how many units you're getting, what the subsidy and everything like that is going to be. I think 11 months could be agreeable down the line depending on where things go later on.
Okay, great.
I am curious about one thing. Do you have like, this would kind of help guide my client. Do you have like a number that Home Love is willing to offer my client for a certain number of places? Do you have anything like that that you can provide me?
I don't think that we can provide a specific number, again, because there's so many different variations of the possibilities of properties that you could possibly give us. And so it really just depends on, is it a larger unit and how many units? How many people overall are we able to house in terms of these properties? So as we get further into it, we can definitely start to provide numbers once we have a more solid plan of the different properties that we would be using. We would definitely be willing to give some numbers.
Okay. Would it be possible for me to take a just brief sidebar? I
Absolutely.
know that's a little weird because I'm by myself.
You're fine.
You're fine. Did we go into our own room?
I think we're okay to stay here.
Okay.
If you would like to talk to one another, though, then you should go to your breakout room.
Okay. Ritha, do you want to sidebar for a quick second?
Sorry, thank you for that. I was trying to kind of like draft a little bit of an agreement to see if we could maybe come to an agreement at least on a few things.
Sure.
So I think because my client, this is his business, this is his livelihood. I think that he would be willing to offer Home Love quite a few properties if they were willing to offer him a decent subsidy. Just to kind of put some feelers out there, how would you guys feel? I know this is probably going to be contingent a little bit on how many properties he's willing to offer and how many they sleep and such, but is $450,000 anywhere near what Home Love would be willing to offer my client?
I definitely think there might need to be a little bit more negotiation on that point, but in that spirit, me and Ritha did discuss like an alternative starting point. Instead of the 3-bedroom duplex, we were wondering if we did, or if Mr. Fagan would be willing to give 2 of the 3 bedrooms. That way it's housing the same number of people, which is 12, but at a reduced rate of 1,700 rather than the 2,200, because we do understand that this is Mr. Fagan's livelihood, and we do really appreciate like the sacrifice he's willing to make. If that was the case, if we did 2 3-bedrooms, in addition to any like smaller units that Mr. Fagan would be willing to volunteer, we would be willing to, at least for the starting point, offer 150K as the subsidy.
So for my client, the difference between him offering the duplex and the house to Home Love is that he's giving up 1 unit versus giving up 2 units. Yes, although the duplex can be done side by side, he's giving up 2 of his properties to Home Love versus just 1. And yes, although the price does seem cheaper, in the end, it doesn't end up being any cheaper for Home Love because you're taking $1,700 times 2. That's $3,400 versus the $2,200 for the same number of people to be slept somewhere. That's my client losing more money instead of less money. So, I mean, I kind of dropped it up a little bit of an offer, and if you guys are interested in hearing it out with the subsidy, and we can discuss the subsidy if that's something that you guys are interested in, or if it's completely off base, we can go somewhere else. We can go in a different direction. So what I came up with was the 3-bedroom duplex, which would house 12 people, which was 2 units of 6 people. And then 4 of the 2-bedroom apartments. So those are 2 properties. With the 2-bedroom apartments, he could sleep, or Home Love could sleep 16 people. Sorry, math. Lawyers can't do math. It would sleep 16 people plus the 12 in the duplex, right? So that's giving quite a few people a place to stay. But it's also, looking at my client's revenues, he would need to be subsidized somewhere around $425,000, $450,000. But on top of that, that's not me saying that he's not willing to volunteer some units, because we're still willing to talk about volunteering some units that he would be losing money on, if that makes any sense. Like he's willing to work with you guys and volunteer some units and still, end up losing money in the long run. But right now, the 3-bedroom duplex, I think, is the biggest unit that the one big unit he's willing to give up, unless Home Love, is willing to budge somewhere.
So just to
Okay.
clarify really quick. Oh, sorry, Rita. Just one quick question. You said you would be willing to offer 4 2-bedroom apartments, correct?
Yes, the 4 2-bedroom apartments and the 1 3-bedroom duplex.
Okay.
So just like looking at that number a little bit, I do want to say that 450,000 for a subsidy, especially considering that we're only, obviously it's a very generous offer, but we're only getting 1 property that could fit a larger family. And like I stated before, the majority of these refugee families are larger families, and our goal is to make them as comfortable as possible. That number is a little bit high for us. So is there any way that we can work either with the units that are being given or that subsidy number, anything else that we can provide, maybe some non-monetary options to bring that down into more of a range that we're willing to work with?
Do you have a range that you are willing to work with, and that will kind of determine?
Under 450. So probably looking closer to 250 is a better number for us. And obviously we understand again that this is partially volunteering and partially that Mr. Fagan is just trying to do a good deed for these refugees. But we do also have to consider that we're a nonprofit and we're doing our best to house as many people as possible. And we need a number that's a little bit lower.
I completely understand where you're coming from, but just off the rates that are on there, if my client was to rent those properties out 52 weeks of the year, which does happen there, he would make $405,000. So even without volunteering properties, even with the 250K, he's still losing quite a bit of money. We felt like that was a very generous offer because of the $405,000 that he would be essentially losing off of that. I just don't think 250 is going to get us to the point where we're able to accept that. And like I said, we offered the duplex in kind of a manner to say, it is kind of 2 units in 1. You can put 2 families of 6 in there instead of us just offering the 1 3-bedroom house and saying, oh, that's just 6 people. We feel that the duplex is honestly in the best interest of Home Love because you're getting 2 in 1.
No, absolutely. And I think we both, Mona and I, understand that point, which is why I offered up the possibility of adjusting what's the properties that would be given. If 450 is the only number that's going to work for these properties, then I think the best option is to change the properties that we're looking at.
Also, additionally, I do want to just hop in and add that Mr. Madrone was under the understanding that Mr. Fagan isn't usually able to rent out all of his properties. And in order to help with that, HomeLove is willing to, make a post on their website to kind of advertise like Mr. Fagan's good intentions. Again, this is in terms also adding in with a non-disclosure that it's not discussed that there was a subsidy involved as we are trying to protect our mission. But we think with putting that information on the website will also help Mr. Fagan increase the number of units he can rent as well.
Oh, no, we 100%, we would appreciate that. And obviously, yes, sometimes they aren't rented out, but there is times when it's rented out consistently and in consecutive weeks. So, I mean, I just kind of think that if you guys want to put some properties together and give me an offer, I'd be willing to listen to that. But I think right now, like my client feels that 4 2-bedroom houses in 1 3-bedroom duplex, that's pretty generous in our opinion. And we're even still willing to talk about volunteering some properties. I mean, if that number can get above, say, 325, 350,000, if we can meet somewhere towards the middle, we could probably work with that. But the $250,000 would cause my client to lose money, so much so that he would probably go out of business.
Okay.
So
Well,
sorry. Quick question.
No.
Of the 4 2-bedroom apartments that were mentioned, are any could those be volunteered?
I mean, my client was looking for those to be subsidized. If you want to talk about some volunteer properties and what we can volunteer on top of those properties, if we're just giving up one of the larger properties, we can volunteer some more of the smaller properties just to help HomeLove out in this situation, because we understand, like I said, we want to work with you guys. We want to ensure that HomeLove is able to live out their mission and is able to do what they want to do. So if you want to discuss maybe some volunteer properties, we're open to it.
So if we could just, before doing that, I just want to get a little bit of clarification where you got this 450,000 number from. Can you give me either a breakdown of how that price would be allocated based on the properties, or some sort of reference to where you got that number?
So if you take the numbers 2,200 total for the duplex per week, and you multiply that by 52 weeks, that gets you to $114,000. And then I took the 4 2-bedroom apartments at $1,400 a week, and that got me to $291,200, which brings the total to $405,200 for possible income of my client. Like I said, we'd be willing to go down to 350 because, like you said, some weeks it's not going to be rented. But I think below that 350 number, my client's not going to be able to do that.
And does that include the cost of maintenance in that price, this rent price?
So that's another thing my client wanted to discuss. Obviously, he's going to volunteer some properties, as I said, and he realizes that in those volunteer properties, it's probably going to be his responsibility to cover the maintenance in those because he is volunteering. But for the subsidized properties, he doesn't feel that because he's not getting a damage deposit like he would generally, he doesn't feel that it should be his deal to cover damages that are caused by these refugees. Like let's say somebody punched a hole in his wall. He doesn't feel like he should have to pay for that because this isn't him volunteering. He's being paid for these houses to be used by HomeLove.
We do appreciate that, and we're definitely willing to negotiate on the amount that we can provide in terms of repair costs for the subsidized properties. But before we do that, is it okay if Ritha and I take a quick sidebar?
Of course.
Hi, thank you so much for your patience. So Ritha and I took a couple of minutes. We wanted to kind of talk about some alternatives that we could reach. So while we 3-bedroom duplex is one property, and that's very generous offer, we think that because it's on the higher end of the cost, to try and bring down cost, we were wondering if you would be willing, or Mr. Fagan would be willing to do a 1-2-bedroom duplex. And if that was rented out annually, that would cost about $93,600, along with 1 3-bedroom, which would, sorry, let me know if I'm talking too fast.
No, you're good. You're good.
Which will lead to about $88,400, which total that would lead to $182,000. And then along with that, we were hoping that Mr. Fagan would be willing to offer 3 of the 2-bedroom as volunteered properties. And then we would be willing to bring up our subsidy from, I believe we were at $250K up to $325K. And we do really appreciate Mr. Fagan's willingness to work with us and his ability to volunteer properties. We really strongly believe in our mission to help refugees. And I think that, being able to house them not only helps them heal and promotes, this ability to bring families together, but it also reduces the risks of that cities suffer through from having transients in the area. So I just wanted to emphasize that. But is that something that Mr. Fagan would be willing to do?
Sorry, could you repeat that again? You said the 1 3-bedroom house, correct?
Correct.
And you said the 1 2-bedroom duplex.
Correct.
And then you said
bedroom.
3 of the 2-bedroom apartments?
Yes.
Those would be volunteer properties?
Yes.
And you said you were at what number?
325K.
325K. Would you be willing to stretch just a little bit to 350,000? I think that I could get my client to agree to that.
I think instead of maybe stretching to 350,000, I think something we haven't considered is the time lengths that we would be renting this. So for the 2 larger properties, we would want to keep it to a year. But for the smaller properties, we can definitely bring down the number of months that we would have refugees staying there. And that would hopefully help lower that cost as well. Because right now, all the calculations that we did were based on an annual basis, not necessarily leaving room for adjustment for those months.
Okay, so for the $325,000, I don't know that my client will be comfortable with the full year. Would 11 months, back to 11 months, be agreeable for you both?
For the 2-bedroom and for the 3-bedroom?
Yes, for the larger units.
Okay. Give me 1 second to punch out some numbers.
And what about for the smaller properties? How much would he be comfortable volunteering those for?
For the length of time, is that what you're asking?
Yes, for how long?
Would 6 or 7 months be agreeable to you?
Let's see how those numbers work out.
So just to make sure that I'm on the right page, for the 2-bedroom duplex at 11 months, I'm getting $79,200. And then for the 3-bedroom at 11 months, it's coming out to $74,800 for a total for those two properties at $154K.
Okay.
And then you said for the 2-bedroom, how long would that be?
I said 6 or 7 months. I mean, whatever. Do you guys have any sort of counteroffer to that, or is that agreeable to you?
Would you be willing to do 8 months?
I think we could work with 8 months on the smaller units.
Okay, great.
And that's still assuming that we operate at that 325 number, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So I did some quick math, and feel free to let me know if it's not 100% right. But with the 2-bedroom at, I believe we said 8 months, correct?
Yes.
At 8 months, that's coming out to $134,400. So combining that with the 11 months for the other two properties, we're getting at 288,400 would be the total amount of revenue that Mr. Fagan would be willing to give up. And so since our subsidy level or agreed subsidy right now is 325K, we were wondering how many units Mr. Fagan would be willing to volunteer on top of this.
Is there a certain unit that you would be looking at for that? I mean, I think for my client, like, yes, although the numbers may seem they're running that way, like we've talked about, damages are a possibility. And if he's volunteering 3, and we've already said that he's not worried about Home Love having to pay for any damages in the volunteered units. He's volunteering those 3 units. It's a very real possibility that there's going to be quite a bit of damage in those that are going to cost him money. Just, I mean, generalized maintenance, and on top of that, just wear and tear, that kind of stuff. Obviously, that's going to happen, especially if there's families living in them with children and those kind of things. So, I mean, if there's another unit that you guys would be interested in, we can possibly talk about it. I just, at this point, like, I really think that my client has, although it may seem like revenue wise, he's not giving up a lot. He kind of is, because he takes damage deposits from generalized customers in his homes. So not having those damage deposits could really damage his company's like revenue and their bank account, because there could be unknown amounts of damage that could result in huge amount of money being lost.
Of course. And that's what we want the least. We're again so happy that he's even offered to do this. How about instead of adding on more properties, we talk a little bit about the number or the coverage for those damages, since they are very important to Mr. Fagan. I think that Home Love, if these were the properties and this is the current deal that we're working on, assuming that, I think we would be willing to cover 60 to 70% of any damages within the subsidized properties. Is that something that sounds agreeable to you?
I think we can talk about 70. My client was more thinking, obviously, the full amount, but I think 70 is something that if you guys are willing to do, I think that I could probably do that for my client.
Okay, and so just to make sure that we're all on the same page right now, we're currently looking at one of the 2-bedroom duplexes, one of the 3-bedroom houses, and 3 of the 2-bedroom apartments.
Yes.
Along with the 70% of damage, and all of that for the subsidy amount of $325,000.
So I was under the impression that the smaller units would be volunteered. Is that not what you guys were under the impression of?
We were under the impression of those 2 being volunteered as well.
Okay, because
I just lumped them together just to make sure that we were hitting all the properties.
Okay, and the volunteered properties,
Mm-hmm.
Is Home Love offering to cover the damage there, or are you still
Just
wanting
for the subsidized?
Okay, so just to clarify, just the 2 subsidized properties, the 3-bedroom home and the 2-bedroom home, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I think that the 70% I think it's agreeable. And my client obviously realizes that when you're volunteering properties, it's kind of your problem if somebody destroys them. So I think that that's all agreeable for him.
So just to make sure that I'm sorry,
No,
just to
you're
make sure
fine.
that I'm also on the same page. So Mr. Fagan would be willing to volunteer 3 of the 2 bedrooms for a length of 8 months, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then the 2-bedroom duplex and the 3-bedroom would be subsidized for 11 months.
Yes.
Okay.
Mona, can we do a quick sidebar?
Sure.
Okay. We'll be right back. Okay, great. So thank you again so much for being gracious, giving us a little bit of time to just make sure we're all on the same page. So with the current deal that's on the table, I think all of us have come into agreement that those terms are acceptable for both of our clients, but we just want to make sure that Mr. Fagan is also okay with the non-compete agreement. That is really vital for Home Love. We want to make sure that that's something that remains intact. And again, the non-compete, or sorry, the non-disclosure agreement is only stating that he can't mention the subsidy or that we are particularly subsidizing his properties. He can talk about his work. He can discuss the fact that he's renting out or giving volunteering of properties for refugees. He just can't speak on the subsidy.
I think that's agreeable for my client. I think that, you know, like I said, this whole time, he really believes in Home Love and he wants them to be successful and he wants to help them to the best of his ability. So I think that that's agreeable to my client to not mention anything of the subsidy. He would really appreciate, as you mentioned earlier, the posting on your website about his work and things like that. I mean, he runs a business, and if Home Love is going to be in this community and people are going to be researching it, it would be great if his business was, you know, on that website, because that would probably do nothing but help his business, you know. So I think that that's also agreeable. I feel like we've come to a pretty good agreement for both sides, in my opinion,
Absolutely.
to help out as much
I agree.
refugees as possible.
Yeah, we're really excited to work with Mr. Fagan, and thank you so much for all your hard work. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now I think you guys get 4 minutes for prep and then 3 minutes for post-round analysis. Is that correct?
Yes, we will be
Do
ready.
you know if you guys are going first or if Miss Cuellar is going to go first?
I believe that we are Team A, so I think we go first.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. See you in 4 minutes.
All right, thank you so much. Hi, if it's okay, we'd like to go ahead and get started on like the post-negotiation analysis.
Of course. Please go
Okay,
ahead.
great. So some of the things that Ritha and I think we did well was that we were able to meet with opposing counsel. We were able to meet with them in the middle. I think our overall communication was really well. We were able to go back and forth and try to get closer to our idealized goal. And I think Ritha and I's teamwork was really good. In addition, I think we were able to get pretty much everything that our client wanted, as well as keeping the subsidy amount below the max amount, which I think our client will appreciate since his goal is to help as many refugees as possible.
Absolutely. And some of the things that maybe we could have worked on, or maybe we would adjust in future mediation sessions. The first being, we wanted to speak on our mission a little bit more. Obviously, the entire synopsis for this is that we are working for refugees. And I think we could have emphasized that point a little bit more than we did. The second thing that we could have worked on were just being a little bit clearer on some of the points. I think there was a couple points where there was some confusion, and that could have been avoided if we had spoken a little bit more clearly and effectively. But that's essentially what we thought we could fix.
Okay, great. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to ask any questions.
You are.
Great. Could you tell me a little bit about your preparation coming into the negotiation, what you guys did to prepare?
Sure. Well, both of us ended up FaceTiming and we kind of individually read through the fact patterns. We made sure to go through, first of all, identify what our client's goals were. What was our client trying to accomplish? And then trying to work out what our highest offer was and what our lowest offer was, and then proceeding to start at the low, and then work our way towards the max amount our client was willing to give away. But I think by outlining that in a clear, explicit manner, it was able to provide us with clarity while we negotiated with the opposing counsel.
And another strategy that we employed was trying to anticipate some of the moves that the opposing counsel was going to make, maybe some areas of ambiguity or some things that they might not want to give up as much. And I think that really helped us anticipate how the conversation would go in the mediation session.
And also, obviously, you guys went against a team of one. How did you have to adapt your own teamwork and distribution of work, if at all, going against just a single negotiator?
I think the pace of the round was more rapid. There was a lot more information flow in this round versus previous rounds where there were two opposing counsels. So between Mona and I, we really had to work on making sure that we were on the same page while still quickly keeping the conversation going. And that was mostly done through nonverbal cues. But also we took those two moments to go into the sidebar and speak and make sure we were on the same page.
Additionally, I think it really helped by clarifying with opposing counsel just to make sure that both me and Ritha were on the same page, because obviously she's a team of one, so she knows what she's trying to convey. So making sure both me and Ritha were on the same page as well as her.
Great. And last question, how did you feel about information gathering in the round? I know that Rita just mentioned information flow was better than earlier rounds, but how did you feel as though you did with information gathering?
I feel like the math made it very interesting. I think it definitely took us a second to get the numbers on the page, but I think the numbers also help provide clarity and try to help us and understand where she was coming from, as well as meet our goals as well. So I think it actually helped provide a lot of clarity.
Yeah, and I also think that we had done some prep in advance of questions that we wanted to ask and make sure that we had hit on. And we did that pretty early on, which gave us a better picture of what we were actually working with. And I think that was really helpful.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we should go into our team rooms, right? Okay.
Good afternoon. To reflect a little bit on this negotiation, I think that there are a few things that I could have done better. I noticed myself kind of letting the other team take control of the negotiation. I don't know if part of that is because I was by myself, but it seemed like they were controlling the narrative a little more than I would have liked. They were asking me to make offers, and when I was making offers, they were kind of just kind of answering it in a way where they weren't really making an offer. And I would have liked to have been able to hear their offers to make my counter offer. That's kind of been my strategy today. So I guess it kind of just put me in a different situation than I had been throughout the day today. Something that I do think I did good is kind of keeping organized. This problem was a little more confusing when it came to math and those kinds of things and the problems we did earlier in the day. The problems earlier in the day to me seemed more straightforward. There weren't as many little nuances or other problems that you had to solve within the problem. It just kind of was more black and white of this or that. This one you kind of had to play around with a little bit more, and it was honestly really easy to get disorganized, and that's when I would take a step back and reorganize myself. And I feel like I did kind of do a good job of that, especially being by myself and not having anybody else to confer with, to clarify, and those kinds of things. So I think this negotiation was probably my least successful of the day. I do think I got agreeable terms for my client, but I do feel like there's some things that I probably could have been a little tougher on to reach an agreement, but we were running out of time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. And you just mentioned you thought there were some things you could have been tougher on. What specifically do you think you could have been tougher on?
Well, I think they kind of weren't really budging on a lot of things. So I think I kind of like talked myself into budging more on my end because they weren't moving too much on their end. So I kind of wish I would have been a little tougher on the payment for my client and which houses he was willing to give up, because my client really wasn't looking to give up a bunch of their bigger units, which they didn't. They only gave up 2. But I think that my client would have rather have given up just 1. And that's why I was kind of pushing the duplex. But in the end, I kind of let them push me off of the duplex a little bit. Even though I ended up getting agreeable terms that were very agreeable to my client, I kind of let them push me off of initially what I thought was in my client's best interest.
And what do you think your client's ultimate goals were for this negotiation?
So, I mean, although my client did love Home Love and their morals and their values that back up their company, my client does run a business. And so really what he was looking to get out of this negotiation, I guess, was he wanted to work with charity, but at the same time, he didn't want to lose money. So his ultimate goal was, I guess, to get his name out there working with charity, but also not to lose too much money when it came to his business, because his business is his job and his business is his livelihood. So he didn't want to give up too much to help Home Love with their vision.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And do you know,
I can go grab this other room.
that's what I was going to ask. Does everybody come back in here and do we do like some brief feedback, or do
Yes.
we wait for all
Yes,
scores?
I can go grab them if you give me 1 second. Perfect. I don't remember what number they were. I think it was 9.
9. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, wait, it looks like they're coming back.
Great. Hi there.
Hey. Hi.
Hi. Okay. Thanks. So, I think we give feedback. Is that okay? Or do I have to wait and go to the other room for score sheets or anything, or?
I think you can just give feedback. I'm not sure. That's what they've done all day.
I think we see your score, Megan. So you can go ahead and give your feedback.
Okay, great, great. And then afterwards, I guess you guys will probably go back to the main room. I'm probably going to announce the rankings for the final round. So great job to all of you. It was a really great round. You did a lot in 50 minutes. So good job. And I think you both got really good deals for your clients. So my name is Megan Deitch. I am an attorney and I'm also the director of the ADR program at U of H. And so I see this a lot. In fact, I've seen this fact pattern before. We did this last year for our intra-team competition. It was our final round problem as well. So I was pretty familiar with both parties already. It's funny because I think, like you guys mentioned, there was some math at the end, and I always love it every time a lawyer, and we say it all the time, right? But as Alyssa's like, I'm a lawyer, math. I'm like, yeah, I always say that. It's so funny. So I thought you guys all did a really good job. What year are y'all?
Mona and I are 1Ls.
I'm a 3L.
Okay. And so Alyssa, when you came into this, were you always solo, or did you have a partner who could no longer participate?
I was supposed to have a partner, but he slept through his alarm, so I no longer have a partner.
Okay. Well, you did a fabulous job even without a partner. There are some like pluses and minuses of not having a partner. Obviously, when you have a partner, you have to focus on teamwork. And if you don't have an even distribution, then it can affect your score negatively. I've actually seen a lot of people before who do go single, if the competition rules allow for it, and can advance, of course. And I asked both Mona is it Rita? Ritha, if it affected them at all. And and I think maybe, to some degree a little bit, but like you said as well, Alyssa, having somebody to confer with, I think is also very helpful. So either way, I don't think I definitely don't think it hurt you. But I don't know your partner, so or who was supposed to be. So just a couple of things generally that I wanted to say. You guys all did a great job. I knew who you were and I knew why we were here. I think you can do a little bit more in the beginning, which I think you guys, Team 9 had mentioned that even in your post-round analysis, is maybe give us even more context, help us really build the story, the scene, for the judges, so that we not only know who your client is, but what's most important to them, why we're here, what their interests are, and really why do we care about your client. I think you can do it just a little bit more. You guys all did it, but it could be a little bit more. And then I think that there was some good information gathering going on. I know you guys, Team 9 mentioned that there was kind of this free flow of information, especially in comparison with earlier rounds, which I definitely saw. And so I thought you guys really had good structure, right? It was kind of, story introduction, and then you did have some information gathering. But always make sure that those questions that you absolutely have to have answered, and that you need early on. I liked you guys kind of did info gathering all throughout though, which I think is really good. Let me see. One thing, this is just like a competition thing, and you guys figured it out after a couple of minutes. If one team takes a break, both teams essentially have to take a break. So you do have to leave. And that's why I said, if you guys are wanting to talk to one another, you would need to go to a breakout room, and because the judge isn't allowed to see what you guys are discussing. I would always recommend if somebody takes a break, you should take a break as well. You might as well, especially because, you two have a partner. So it just makes sense. So you can have, discussion about how things are going and how we got here. A couple of times with both teams, I heard some things, which this tends to be like a very woman thing that women do. Like if that's something that could work for you, or, well, we were thinking something under 450, like maybe 250. It's almost the idea of giving a range, right? If I'm in a negotiation for my own salary and I say, well, I was thinking of something between 75 and 95. There's a theory behind ranges, but you would have to know you're doing it because you're actually like above what you really need, probably. But if you give a range, right, and I'm the employer, I'm probably going to say, okay, well then 75, right, if that's within my authority. So just keeping in mind that sort of concept, that if you give them an out, or you give them kind of an easy way to give you less or take more, then they might just do that. So it's really difficult, and this takes time, but I think just even like, so, and this is the offer. Without, if that works for you, you want to throw those things in because it just seems like polite in conversation. But you just don't need to do it in the negotiation. I also thought towards the very end, Alyssa, you did a good job with getting clarification. because I think that you still weren't entirely certain which houses were going to be, I think the word that you volunteered or, so you were getting clarification on that. And then the 70% that they were willing to pay for any like repairs or damages, if that was for those ones or for the other ones that were subsidized, which you guys got the answer to that. I think everybody, you know, some things to utilize a little bit more, maybe a little bit more summarizing. We saw a little bit of horse trading, which is kind of going back and forth and just like, what, here's this number, here's that number, which is great. I think when you have an option package, you present it. And then you're waiting for the other side's response, of course, right? And you don't want to negotiate against yourself, which is important. But I think where we were at is sometimes focusing more like on the numbers as opposed to the underlying interests beneath. So I definitely liked both of y'all had, you know, framing of like, we want to work with you guys, or we really appreciate that, you know, Elias is doing this. And I think you could have done it even more potentially, but I thought you guys all did a really great job. And also structure and time management. I thought you guys did a great job with that. I thought it felt really organized to me. I don't know if it felt organized to you guys, but I thought you did a good job with that. And obviously you finished in time. Do you guys have any questions for me?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Well, great job to all. And I guess you'll probably go back to the main room.
Thank you.